When aliens entered the silent warship, they triggered humanity's last weapon. 29 days after the message was sent, the last Valorian transport ship crossed the boundary out of human space. Captain Lee Do-yun stood on the observation deck of the Eternal Vigil, watching the alien vessels retreat. Beside him, Park Ji-won allowed herself a small smile. It was the first time Do-hyun had seen her smile in 3 years. "They're actually leaving," she said quietly. "I didn't think they would." "Fear is a powerful motivator," Do-hyun replied. "At least in the short term. You think they'll come back?" Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Eventually. Maybe 10 years. Maybe 20. They'll convince themselves we were bluffing, that the fleet was fake, that the warheads don't exist. Fear fades, memory becomes doubt, and doubt makes people brave again." "Then what was the point?" Ji-won asked. "We bought time. 3 years ago, humanity was dying. Now we have breathing room. 30 years if we're smart, maybe more if we're lucky. That's 30 years to find survivors, 30 years to rebuild, 30 years to figure out how to survive the next time someone comes knocking." Behind them, the crew worked to restore the ship to full operation. Choi Hyerin had cracked the encrypted databases the Valorians abandoned in their hurry to leave. Inside those databases were human cultural archives, genetic samples, and terraforming data. Information the aliens had stolen from human colonies. Kim Min-ho supervised the loading of supplies from captured alien cargo vessels: food, medicine, raw materials. Payment, Do-hyun called it, for the insult of invasion. Kang Soo-jin approached with a medical datapad. "Captain, I analyzed the blood samples from Lieutenant Keseva. The Valorian biology is vulnerable to 73 different human pathogens. Common cold, flu, even some bacteria from our gut would be lethal to them. If we needed biological weapons—" "File it," Do-hyun interrupted gently. "Store the information securely and hope we never need it. We're not conquerors, Soo-jin. We're survivors." "There's a difference." "Is there?" Soo-jin asked quietly. "After what we did to those soldiers?" Do-hyun turned to face his medic. The young woman looked tired, haunted by the violence they'd committed. "Those soldiers came to rob a grave. They came to steal from the dead. We made them understand that some graves have guardians. That's not the same as hunting down innocents. But the things we could do with this information would make us the very thing that destroyed Earth in the first place," Do-hyun said firmly. "The plague that killed our world started as a weapon someone thought they could control. We won't repeat that mistake. We defend, we survive, but we don't become monsters." Over the next week, the 12 remnant ships began to gather in the Proxima system. It took time for all of them to make the journey, but eventually 240 humans assembled in one location. All that remained of humanity's military might. They met virtually, holographic projections allowing the crews to see each other despite being on different ships. Do-hyun looked at the faces of his fellow survivors. Some were young, barely 20 years old. Others were veterans who had fought in humanity's territorial wars before the plague. All of them wore the same expression of exhausted relief. "We did it," Captain Yoon Hyun of Trapship 3 said. "We actually did it. We bluffed an entire empire into retreating." "It wasn't a bluff," Do-hyun corrected. "We would have detonated those warheads if necessary. That wasn't a lie. But we didn't have to," Captain Jong Min-seo of Trapship 11 added. "That's what matters. We bought humanity time without having to destroy ourselves in the process." Do-hyun nodded. "Now we use that time wisely. The plague that killed Earth is finally dying out. The planet can be reclaimed. Our frozen genetic banks can rebuild the population. But we need more than biology to resurrect a species. We need purpose." He activated the star map, showing the galaxy around them. Red zones marked former human territory currently occupied by various alien species. Blue zones marked known human colonies that might still exist in the deep frontier. Yellow zones marked unexplored space where humans might have fled. 11 species now live in what was ours. They've had 3 years to establish themselves. Rooting them out would take decades of warfare we can't afford. 240 soldiers can't reconquer 100 worlds. "So what's the plan?" Park Ji-won asked. Do-hyun highlighted the blue zones. We find the other humans. Before the plague hit Earth, we had 17 deep space research stations, 23 colony ships that were between systems when the quarantine was announced, hundreds of trading vessels and exploration craft that were too far out to be recalled. Most of those people probably think they're the last humans alive. We unite them, Captain Jong said, understanding dawning. We bring them together. Exactly. We rebuild. Not as conquerors, but as survivors. We share the genetic material we've recovered. We establish new colonies in unclaimed systems. We become strong enough that the next time someone looks at human space, they think twice about invading. And if the aliens come back before we're ready? Corporal Yoon Dae-hyun asked. Do-hyun's expression hardened. Then we remind them, as many times as necessary, why human became a word that meant unkillable. The meeting continued for hours, making plans, dividing responsibilities, assigning search sectors. Each of the 12 ships would take a different region of space to explore. They would search for survivors, establish communication networks, and begin the slow process of rebuilding their species. As the meeting ended and the holographic projections faded, Do-hyun found himself alone on the bridge with Ji-won. "Do you really think we can do this?" she asked. "Rebuild an entire species from 240 soldiers and whatever colonists we find?" "I don't know," Do-hyun admitted. "But I know we have to try. Earth gave us a gift when it sent us into hibernation. It gave us time. 3 years ago, we had nothing but dying worlds and retreating ships. Now we have 12 warships, a 30-year head start, and proof that we can make the galaxy fear us if necessary." He looked out at the stars, at the vast emptiness that held both danger and possibility. Our ancestors crawled out of caves with nothing but stone tools and determination. They survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and every disaster nature threw at them. We have their genes, their stubbornness, their refusal to quit. We're the continuation of a species that's been fighting for survival since before we could write, Ji-won said, understanding. "This is just another chapter in a very long story." "Exactly. And we're going to make sure it's not the final chapter." The Eternal Vigil turned toward the galactic core, where intelligence suggested a human research colony might have survived in the lawless frontier zones. Behind it, 11 other ships split off toward their assigned sectors. 12 directions, 12 searches, 12 chances to find other survivors. Captain Lee Do-hyun made a log entry before the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed. Day 1 of restoration. We started with 20 humans sleeping in darkness. Now we're 240, spread across 12 ships searching a galaxy for our scattered family. We've gone from hiding in abandoned vessels to actively hunting for survivors. We've gone from playing dead to proving we're very much alive. The galaxy thought it had seen the last of humanity. They were wrong. We didn't die. We just needed a moment to catch our breath. And now we're ready to show them what humans do best. We survive. We adapt, we endure, and we never, ever quit. The Eternal Vigil vanished into the void, leaving behind only a silent promise drifting through space. A promise that humanity would return. Not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as survivors building something new from the ashes of what was lost. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other humans waited to be found. Other survivors who thought they were alone. Other people carrying the flame of humanity through the night. The galaxy was vast. The odds were terrible. The enemies were many. But humans had faced worse odds before and won. This was just another impossibility to overcome, another challenge to defeat, another extinction to survive. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was refusing to accept the end. When aliens entered the silent warship, they triggered humanity's last weapon. Commander Thavrin watched the recording for the 3rd time, and his hand still shook. Lieutenant Kesava sat in the Valorian cruiser's medical bay, alive but broken. His eyes stared at nothing. The medical team said he was physically fine, but mentally he might never recover. Whatever he had experienced on that human ship had damaged something deep inside him. The escape pod had arrived 2 hours ago, launched from the Eternal Vigil with Kesava strapped inside. With him came a data chip containing a message that Thavrin was now required to forward to the Valorian High Command immediately. The recording showed the human captain, Lee Do-hyun, standing on the bridge of his ship. Behind him stood 19 other humans, all wearing black combat armor marked with symbols Theveren didn't recognize. Their faces were hard, showing no emotion. They looked like statues carved from stone. "This is Captain Lee Do-hyun of the Terran Remnant Fleet," the human said. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made the words more terrifying. "I am broadcasting this message to any species currently occupying former human territory. You have made a mistake. You thought our silence meant we were extinct. You thought our absence meant we were weak. Today, 12 Valorian soldiers learned how wrong that assumption was." The camera pulled back, showing the bridge in more detail. Human weapons lined the walls. Computer screens displayed technical information that made Valorian scientists look like children playing with toys. 3 years ago, Earth fell to a plague we couldn't stop, Do-hyun continued. We lost billions. Our homeworld became a graveyard. Rather than let the galaxy see us weakened, we went silent. We watched as you divided our territory among yourselves. We watched as you stripped our colonies. We watched as you erased our monuments and claimed our achievements as your own. Behind Do-hyun, one of the humans stepped forward. A woman with cold eyes casually field-stripped a rifle that seemed to bend light around itself. She reassembled it in seconds without looking down, her eyes locked on the camera the whole time. "But we left something behind," Do-hyun said. 12 ships, 12 crews, 12 traps for scavengers who couldn't resist picking through humanity's corpse. The Eternal Vigil is one of them. There are 11 more out there waiting, and unlike you, we know exactly where they are. Another human stepped forward, holding a device that radiated visible energy. Even through the recording, Theveren could feel the threat it represented. "This ship contains 600 quantum collapse warheads," the human explained. His name tag read Kim Min-ho. "If we detonate them, this entire sector becomes uninhabitable for 1,000 years. Your trade routes will be blocked by radiation. Your colonies here will die slowly, cut off from supplies, choking on poisoned space." "We don't want that," Do-hyun said, and for a moment his expression softened slightly. "Humanity never wanted extinction. Not ours, not anyone else's. We are scientists and artists, farmers and teachers. We built beautiful things. We explored the stars with wonder, not conquest. But we also remember our history. We remember what we had to become to survive our own worst impulses." The camera angle changed, showing the ship's observation deck. Through the massive windows, hundreds of ships hung in space, not derelict, not dead. Dark and waiting, but clearly functional. A fleet that had been hiding in the system's asteroid field. Theveren felt his blood freeze. How had his sensors missed all of those ships? "This is our offer," Do-hyun said, his voice dropping to something quieter but somehow more intense. "Leave human space, all of it. Every colony we built, every station we established, every sector we explored. Return what you took or destroy it, we don't care which. But leave. Do this within 30 standard days." He paused, letting the deadline sink in. "If you comply, these ships remain dark. These warheads stay stable. We fade back into whatever corner of the galaxy will have us. History can record that humanity died with dignity, and you can pretend you showed us mercy. Your propaganda can say whatever you want. We don't care about pride anymore." Do-hyun's expression hardened again. "But if you refuse? If you test us? If you call this bluff, then you'll learn something the galaxy forgot about humans. We survived the Ice Age when our tools were made of stone. We survived our own nuclear weapons when we were stupid enough to almost destroy ourselves. We survived extinction events that wiped out entire branches of our evolutionary tree." He stepped closer to the camera, and Theveren reflexively leaned back from his screen. "We survived because when everything else failed, we became the thing that scared the darkness. We became the monster under the bed. We became the nightmare that made predators check over their shoulders. And we became very, very good at it." The transmission shifted to show a star chart. 11 systems highlighted in red. 11 locations where the other trap ships waited. 30 days, Do-hyun repeated, starting from the moment you received this message. "We're watching, we're counting, and we remember everything you've taken from us." The recording ended with Do-hyun's face filling the screen. "We don't want to be the villains in this story. We don't want to be the species that salts the earth and poisons the wells, but we will if we must. Because humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to make them more afraid of you than you are of them." 30 days, he said one final time. "Choose wisely." The screen went black. Theveren sat in silence for a long moment, Then he activated his comm to the Valorian High Command, his voice steady despite the fear churning in his gut. "This is Commander Thavrin of the Third Fleet. I am transmitting a priority alert. The humans are not extinct. Repeat, humans are not extinct. We have encountered active military forces. They have issued an ultimatum. Recommend immediate evacuation of all forces from former human territories." The response came back within minutes. "Commander, are you certain? Our intelligence says, I watched 11 of my soldiers die today." Thavrin interrupted, something he would never normally do with a superior officer. "I have a 12th soldier in my medical bay who may never recover from what he experienced. And I have a recording that shows capabilities we didn't know humans possessed. Sir, with respect, your intelligence is wrong. Very wrong." There was a long pause. Then, stand by for orders. Do not engage. Do not approach the human vessel again. We're convening the War Council. Thavrin watched the eternal vigil on his screen. The ship looked as dead as before, dark, cold, lifeless, but now he knew the truth. Somewhere inside that dark hull, 20 humans were watching him, waiting to see what the Empire would do. He thought about Kesava, broken and staring at nothing. He thought about the 11 soldiers who would never return home. He thought about the casual way that human woman had field-stripped her weapon while staring at the camera. And he thought about the one thing that truly terrified him. The human captain's eyes had shown no anger, no hate, no rage, just cold professional calculation. The eyes of someone who had already accepted death and was now just deciding how many enemies to take along for the ride. When aliens entered the silent warship, they triggered humanity's last weapon. Lieutenant Kesava realized something was very wrong when the lights went out. Complete darkness swallowed his team. Not the darkness of night, but absolute black that seemed to eat the beams from their helmet lamps. The lights should have reached 30 meters. Instead, they died after just 5. "Central, we have a problem," Kesava said into his comm, trying to reach Commander Thavrin on the ship. The power just static. His communication cut off mid-sentence like someone had severed it with a knife. "Boost the signal," he ordered his communications specialist. "I'm trying, sir. Something is jamming us, or... No, wait, it's not jamming. The ship's systems are blocking our transmission. But that's impossible. This ship is dead." Kesava felt his blood run cold. "Maybe it's not as dead as we thought. Reform on me. Combat positions. We're leaving. Now." His 12 soldiers moved into a defensive circle, weapons pointing outward. They started moving back the way they came, toward the breach point and their boarding pod. But when they reached the corridor intersection, they found a sealed blast door blocking their path. "Cut through it," Kesava ordered. 2 soldiers activated their plasma torches. The blue flames should have melted through the metal in seconds. Instead, the door absorbed the heat like it was nothing. After 5 minutes of constant burning, they hadn't even scratched it. "Sir, this door is military grade. It'll take an hour to cut through. We don't have an hour. Find another route." They consulted their maps, looking for alternative paths. There were 3 other corridors that led back to their entry point. They chose the nearest one and started moving. That's when Private Vexthar disappeared. One moment he was there, walking at the rear of the formation. The next moment, nothing. His helmet lamp spun through the air and clattered on the floor. When the other soldiers spun around, they saw only a smear of violet Valorian blood on the wall. No body, no sounds of a struggle. "Just gone. What took him?" Someone whispered, fear making their voice shake. "Stay together," Kesava ordered, but his own voice trembled. "Watch every direction. Weapons hot." They moved faster now, nearly running. Their helmet lamps swung wildly, creating dancing shadows that seemed alive. Behind them, they heard sounds. Scraping metal, soft footsteps, breathing that came from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Contact rear," someone shouted. Trooper Halvan fired his plasma rifle down the corridor behind them. The bright flash illuminated empty space. Nothing there. But when the light faded and their vision adjusted, Halvan screamed. He was alone. The other 11 soldiers had vanished during those 2 seconds of muzzle flash. "Kesava, where are you?" Halvan spun in circles, his rifle pointing at shadows. "Anyone? Answer me! Silence!" Just his own breathing loud in his helmet and the sound of his heart's beating too fast. Something moved in the darkness ahead. A shape, human-sized, quick as thought. Halvan fired again. The plasma bolt struck the wall, melting metal but hitting nothing. "Please," Halvan whispered. "Please, I don't want to die here." A voice spoke from the darkness, calm and cold. It spoke in perfect Valorian. Then you shouldn't have come. Halvan fired blindly again and again until his rifle overheated and automatically shut down. In the silence that followed, he heard footsteps approaching. Slow, measured, confident. The last thing Halvan saw was a human face, partially hidden by a black helmet. Cold eyes stared at him without mercy or anger. Just professional calculation, then darkness took him too. Far away in the ship's security center, Park Ji-won watched through the rebuilt camera network. She spoke into her comm quietly. "Captain, that's 11 down. The last one is heading for the cargo bay. He's separated from his weapons and trying to hide." "Good work, everyone," Do-hyun's voice replied. "Remember, we need HFY alive. He's the one wearing the lieutenant markings. Everyone else is cleared for elimination." Ji-won had already identified HFY hours ago. Her targeting computer had painted a green marker over his armor. Everyone else wore red markers. She never missed her targets, and she never got the colors confused. Throughout the ship, the human team moved like ghosts. Kim Minho had placed sonic devices in key corridors that emitted frequencies the Valorians couldn't hear, but that made them dizzy and disoriented. Choi Hyerin controlled every system, opening doors to herd the aliens into kill zones and closing others to separate them from each other. Yoon Dae-hyun used his heavy weapons to create loud distractions, making the Valorians think there were more humans than there really were. Kang Soo-jin deployed non-lethal nerve agents that paralyzed without killing, making captures easy and quiet. It was psychological warfare perfected over centuries of human conflict. Humans had fought each other for thousands of years before they reached the stars. They knew every trick of fear, every method of breaking an enemy's will. Now they used that knowledge against species who had only known easy victories. Lieutenant HFY found himself alone in a storage room, his team gone, his weapons jammed, his communications dead. He knew he was going to die. The only question was how long he would suffer first. The door opened with a soft hiss. Captain Lee Do-hyun walked in, alone, his helmet under his arm. He looked ordinary, not particularly tall or strong, middle-aged with lines around his eyes that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. But those eyes held something that made HFY press himself against the wall in terror. They held the eyes of someone who had already lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "Lieutenant HFY of the Valorian Empire," Do-hyun said quietly. "You're going to help me deliver a message." "My team," HFY managed to say. "What did you do to them?" "They're dead. Quick deaths, cleaner than they deserved. You'll be different. You get to live. You get to go home and tell your commander what happened here. You're supposed to be extinct." Do-hyun smiled without humor. "We are extinct. Earth is dead. 90% of humanity is gone. But that 10%? We're the ones who survived the unsurvivable. We're the ones who refused to quit. And we're very, very angry about what you did to our colonies." He pulled up a chair and sat down, casual as if they were having coffee instead of standing in a room where 11 soldiers had just been killed. "Here's what you're going to tell your empire. You're going to tell them that humanity left 12 ships like this one, 12 traps. You found one. There are 11 more. And every single one has a crew like mine waiting in the dark." Do-hyun leaned forward. "You're going to tell them to leave human space, all of it. Every colony, every outpost, every salvage operation. Leave within 30 days or we start detonating warheads that will make entire sectors uninhabitable for 1,000 years. "You're bluffing," HFY whispered. "You don't have the resources. Are you willing to bet your empire on that?" Do-hyun asked softly. "After what you've seen today." When aliens entered the silent warship, they triggered humanity's last weapon. Captain Lee Do-hyun opened his eyes and immediately started coughing. His lungs burned as they filled with air for the first time in 3 years. His body felt wrong, like he was wearing someone else's skin. Every muscle ached. His head pounded with a migraine that made him want to close his eyes again. But he couldn't. They had visitors. The cryogenic pod around him hissed and clicked as it completed its wake-up sequence. Warm air replaced the freezing mist. The restraints across his chest released with soft snaps. Slowly, painfully, Do-hyun pushed himself up and out of the pod. The hibernation chamber was dark except for the blue glow of 20 pods arranged in a circle. All of them were activating. All of them were waking their sleeping occupants. Do-hyun's neural implant came online with a sharp pain behind his eyes. Information flooded his brain directly. Status reports, ship systems, enemy positions. The implant connected him to the ship's AI, a military-grade intelligence called Sentinel, that had been watching and waiting for 3 years. "Report," Do-hyun croaked, his voice rough and damaged from years without use. Sentinel's voice spoke directly into his mind. "Hostile boarding party detected. 12 armed individuals. Species identified as Valorian. They breached the hull 2 hours ago. They ignored the warning. They crossed into the restricted zone 18 minutes ago. Remnant protocol is now active." Do-hyun nodded, accepting the information. Around him, his team was emerging from their pods, each one coughing, shaking, forcing their bodies to remember how to move. Lieutenant Park Ji-won was the first to fully recover. She had always been tough. As the team's sniper and reconnaissance specialist, she had trained her body to handle extreme conditions. She pulled herself out of her pod and immediately started checking her equipment locker. "How many?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pain she must be feeling. 12 Valorians, Do-hyun replied. 1 ship in orbit. Probably more waiting to hear back from their boarding team. Ji-won pulled out her sniper rifle and began checking it piece by piece. "They won't hear anything good." Sergeant Kim Min-ho emerged next, laughing despite coughing up fluid from his lungs. 3 years. 3 years we slept in these damn boxes, and someone actually fell for it. "Don't celebrate yet," Do-hyun said. "We still have work to do." The rest of the team assembled quickly. Specialist Choi Hyeran, their electronic warfare expert, immediately moved to a computer terminal and started accessing the ship's systems. Corporal Yoon Dae-hyun, the heavy weapons specialist, grunted as he lifted his massive gun from its storage rack. Private Kang Soo-jin, their medic, distributed injections that would help their bodies recover from hibernation faster. 20 humans in total. 20 soldiers who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. 3 years ago, Earth had died. Not from war, but from a plague that spread too fast for medicine to stop. Billions died in months. The survivors fled to the colonies, but many of those fell too. Humanity faced extinction, and everyone knew it. But Earth's military leaders refused to let their species die quietly. They created a plan, a final desperate trick to buy time for the survivors. They built 12 ships like the Eternal Vigil and filled them with humanity's best weapons technology. Then they made the ships look abandoned and let them drift into space where other species would eventually find them. The trap was simple. Let the scavengers board. Let them think they were safe. Let them get comfortable. And then wake up the crew that had been sleeping in shielded chambers the whole time. Do-hyun and his team were the crew of Trap Ship 7, and today someone had sprung their trap. "Sentinel status of the intruders," Do-hyun ordered. The AI displayed a holographic map of the ship. 12 red dots moved through the corridors, spreading out, searching rooms. They were in the research section now, trying to access the weapons development labs. "They're looking for our technology," Ji-won observed. "They want to know how we built our weapons." "Then let's give them a demonstration," Min-ho said with a dark grin. Do-hyun held up his hand. "No. We follow the protocol exactly as planned. Stage 1 is psychological. We make them afraid. We make them understand they're not the hunters anymore." "Hyeran, can you control the ship's systems?" Hyeran's fingers moved across her terminal. "I have access to lighting, doors, environmental controls, and communication systems. The Valorians haven't figured out how to lock me out yet." "Good. Start sealing bulkheads behind them. Cut off their escape routes. Kill the lights section by section. Make them think the ship is malfunctioning." "What about their communications?" Ji-won asked. "Let them talk to their ship for now," Do-hyun decided. "I want their commander to hear what happens. Fear spreads better when there are witnesses." The team moved into position. They knew this ship better than they knew their own faces. Every corridor, every vent, every maintenance tunnel. They had spent months learning its layout before going into hibernation. Now that knowledge became their greatest weapon. Do-hyun pulled on his combat armor, black and unmarked except for his rank insignia. The suit was designed for ship combat, With magnetic boots, integrated weapons, and stealth coating that absorbed sensor scans, his team wore matching armor, turning them into shadows that could move through the ship unseen. "Remember the rules," Do-hyun told them. "We need one alive to send a message. The rest are targets. Make it quick, make it clean, and make it terrifying." His team nodded. They had trained for this. They had accepted this mission knowing what it meant. They would be the monsters in the dark, the thing that made the scavengers afraid to pick through humanity's bones. "Hyerin, kill the lights," Do-hyun ordered. Throughout the ship, every light went out. Emergency power should have activated, but Hyerin made sure it didn't. The Valorians were plunged into absolute darkness. "Jiwon, Minho, take the North Corridor. Daehyun, Sujin, South Corridor. Everyone else, with me." We heard them toward the command center. "Let's show these aliens what happens when they ignore human warnings." The team split up and moved into the dark corridors. They could see perfectly through their helmets' night vision. The Valorians would be blind, confused, easy prey. Do-hyun activated his comm one last time before going silent. "Sentinel, begin recording everything. I want proof of what happens here. I want other species to see this and think twice before they touch another human ship." "Recording active," Sentinel confirmed. Do-hyun smiled in the darkness. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had lost his homeworld, his family, his entire species. It was the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. The Valorians had come looking for weapons. They were about to discover that the greatest weapon humanity ever created wasn't a bomb or a gun. It was the human who refused to die quietly. When aliens entered the silent warship, they triggered humanity's last weapon. The warship floated dead in space. No lights, no power, no life signs. Just cold metal drifting through the darkness like a ghost. Commander Thavrin stared at the massive human vessel on his screen. His 6 eyes narrowed with interest. The ship was called Eternal Vigil according to the fading letters on its hull. It had been 3 years since anyone had heard from the humans. 3 years since their homeworld went silent. 3 years since an entire species simply vanished from the galaxy. "Scan it again," Thavrin ordered his crew. The scanning officer's tentacles moved across the controls. "Still nothing, Commander. No heat, no energy. The reactor is cold. Life support is offline. Whatever happened here, everyone is long dead." Thavrin felt satisfaction wash through him. The Valorian Empire had conquered 47 star systems. Now they would claim the ruins of humanity's territory as their 48th prize. But more importantly, they would take the humans' weapons technology. Before they disappeared, humans had been known for their advanced military systems. Those secrets would make the Valorian Empire unstoppable. "Prepare a boarding team," Thavrin commanded. "I want every computer core stripped, every weapon system cataloged, every piece of technology brought back to our scientists." Lieutenant Kesva assembled his team in the launch bay, 12 of the Empire's best shock troops, each wearing heavy armor and carrying plasma rifles. Kesva was a veteran of 30 campaigns. He had seen combat on burning worlds and frozen moons. Nothing scared him anymore. "This should be easy," he told his troops. "The ship is dead. We go in. We take what we need. We leave. Simple." The boarding pod launched from the Valorian cruiser and crossed the empty space between the two ships. It attached to the human warship's hull with a metallic clang. The cutting torches activated, burning through the reinforced plating with bright blue flames. It took 20 minutes to cut through the thick armor, but finally the seal broke. The boarding team entered the Eternal Vigil. Inside, everything was dark. Their helmet lamps cut through the blackness, revealing corridors that stretched into shadow. The air was thin but breathable. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, barely providing any illumination. "Spread out," Kesva ordered. "Teams of 2. Search every section. Report anything useful." The Valorian soldiers moved through the ship carefully. They found evidence of a hasty departure everywhere. In the crew quarters, personal belongings lay scattered on bunks. Photographs of human families, books left open, clothing draped over chairs. In the mess hall, food had rotted in serving trays, now just dried husks covered in mold. But there were no bodies. No signs of violence. No indication of what had made an entire crew abandon their ship. "Sir, this is strange," one trooper reported over the comm. "There's no damage to the ship." No hull breaches. No battle scars. It's like everyone just walked away. Kesava felt a small twinge of unease, but he pushed it down. He was a soldier of the Empire. He didn't believe in ghost stories. The team continued deeper into the ship. They passed through engineering sections where massive engines sat cold and silent. They walked through weapons bays where human missiles and railguns waited in their launch tubes, never to be fired again. They explored medical bays where equipment still sat ready for patients who would never arrive. Finally, they reached the command center at the heart of the ship. The bridge was a circular room filled with dark screens and dead consoles. The captain's chair sat empty in the center, facing the main view screen which showed only the static of space. "Try the computers," Kesava ordered. The team's tech specialist approached the main terminal. His clawed fingers moved over the human keyboard, trying to access the system. Most of the consoles were locked behind military encryption that would take days to crack. But one terminal, just one, was active. The screen flickered to life, displaying a message in multiple languages. The specialist's translator software converted it to Valorian instantly. "Commander, you need to see this," the specialist said quietly. Kesava read the message on the screen. "Warning. Restricted area ahead. Do not proceed beyond this point. This is your only warning. Turn. Back now. Leave this ship immediately." The message repeated in dozens of languages. Human, Valorian, Krellian, Bexthari. Every major species in the galaxy could read this warning. Kesava felt that unease grow stronger. He activated his comm to the Valorian cruiser. "Commander Thavarin, we've found a warning message. It's telling us to leave." There was a pause. Then Thavarin's voice came through, sharp with impatience. "A warning? From a dead species? They're extinct, Lieutenant. Their threats are meaningless. Continue your search. Find me those weapon specifications, but sir, that's an order. The Valorian Empire doesn't run from the warnings of corpses. Push forward. Search the restricted areas. That's probably where they kept their best technology." Kesava looked at his troops. They were trained to follow orders without question, but he could see the hesitation in their body language, the way they held their weapons a little tighter, the way their head sensors swiveled, checking the shadows. "You heard the commander," Kesava said, trying to sound confident. "We proceed." They moved past the warning terminal, through a heavy blast door that opened with a hiss of stale air. Beyond it, the corridors became more ominous. The walls here were reinforced with extra armor plating. Security systems lined the ceiling, their cameras dark but somehow still feeling like they were watching. As they walked deeper into the restricted section, none of the Valorians noticed the small light that activated on a panel behind them. A tiny green indicator that had been dark for 3 years suddenly glowed softly in the darkness. Deep in the ship, in a section shielded from all scans and sensors, something responded to that signal. Machines that had been dormant began to wake. Systems that had been sleeping started to initialize, and in 20 sealed chambers, frost began to melt from reinforced glass. The Valorian boarding team continued their search, confident in their superiority, certain of their safety. They had no idea they had just triggered humanity's final trap. They had no idea that the eternal vigil was never meant to be found, empty. They had no idea that 20 humans had been waiting in the darkness for exactly this moment. The hunt was about to begin.